Okay, hello everyone, and happy new year. I'm Henry Gordon Smith, the founder and CEO of Agritecture. Over 14 years ago, I started as a young blogger interested in urban agriculture and controlled environment agriculture. And since then, I've become a consultant, advising with my team in 45 countries on greenhouses, vertical farms, and various food systems projects. But true to our DNA at Agritecture, we continue to blog, write newsletters, and produce webinars like this one today. So we're going to kick off the year with a really exciting webinar on a topic that I've been interested in, which is about controlled environment agriculture and farming in the Caribbean. And so to do that, I wanted to speak to Ralph Birkhoff, who's from Island Growers Caribbean. How you doing, Ralph?
Great. Thanks, Henry.
So glad to have you here. I want to learn all about what you've been doing and what Island Growers is, because as I said, the Caribbean is a very particularly interesting market with some unique conditions. And I got to meet and hear about your organization because you were actually the winners of our grand prize for the 2025 CEA census to go to Sea Ag World. So again, congratulations on that. And it sort of brought us back together. And I'm excited to learn more about that here today. So
Great.
let's kick
Thanks.
off with the origin story. Tell us about you a little bit, your experience, and how did this business begin?
Right. Well, I've actually been living down in the Caribbean now for about 14 years. We started Alchemy Renewables, which is kind of the head co for Island Growers Caribbean, about eight years ago. We were originally really kind of focused on clean energy, utility grade clean energy project. We still continue to do that primarily in the geothermal, wind and solar sectors. But after living down here for a while, I started asking a lot of questions about my grocery store experiences here, trying to find fresh produce, noticing that, the stores run out of a lot of fresh produce
Hmm.
on a weekly basis. Um, Started to look at, why is it so expensive? Why are the offerings so limited? Why is so much of this fresh produce being imported down to the Caribbean? And, that kind of opened up the whole world into horticulture and understanding, what can and cannot be grown in a subtropical environment with, you know, very high irradiation periods. We get floods, we get droughts, we get hurricanes. So the local sort of traditional farming, is always kind of struggling to keep up. The region on a whole imports something in the order of 7 billion US in food every year, of which about 2.5 billion is fresh produce. So there's a huge gap here. You always want to find the gap. And if you literally go through the supermarkets, you will see, the local crops that are available, which a lot of that's kind of fruit-based crop, potatoes, root crops. But a lot of the greens are imported, and I'd say 90% of those are imported from the US. So started looking at, why is that happening? Why can't we grow more of those types of crops down here in the Caribbean? And ultimately, the reasons are simple. The environment just doesn't sustain that type of those cultivars, so we have to grow them indoors. Then started looking at, greenhouse infrastructure, first of all, and different hydroponic systems, what works here, what doesn't work here. And the main issue, of course, from the investor point of view, from our point of view, is being able to grow it year round, right? Every day of the year, just like everybody else in the CEA world does. And for that, we needed hurricane resistance. We get hurricanes every year, and they're gonna hit somewhere every year. So in order to get commercial insurance, we had to come up with systems in the infrastructure side that are hurricane resistant, and we have been able to do that. We have two different systems we use. We have now actually just onboarded a third indoor farming system for berries, where we have a partner out of Canada that we're working with. So, we've kind of really focused on the infrastructure and the technical side to get over that hurdle of, you know, risk mitigation for investors and insurability. And then obviously to, if we're going to replace imported crops, we have to prove to our customers that we can deliver every day, right? So there's just a zero tolerance there. We have to have complete hurricane resistance in all aspects of the infrastructure, a lot of redundancy on water supply, electrical supply, et cetera, so that if, you know, a storm hits, that we can continue growing it during a hurricane. So that's where we're at right now.
Thanks so much, Ralph, for that detailed introduction. I want to get into some of those things. Let's first like begin with a little bit more context. Which island are you talking about that's like we are here? And how many projects are you at so far with island growers?
Yeah, we started in Barbados with a small kind of R&D project, 5,000 square foot using a sprung greenhouse. Um, we got into production. We had, you know, very limited supply, but we had really good customers, some of the top resorts in Barbados.
Mhm.
And we're currently expanding that farm now. We're going to bump it up to about 35, 40,000 square feet because
Oh.
the demand is certainly there. Um, then we did a project in Tobago where we have about 40,000 square feet. And we're doing primarily greens. We're doing some tomatoes, and we're supplying mainly to the supermarkets there, although some of the resorts in Tobago are buying from that farm as well. And we're just about to open up in Antigua, our third farm. We always all these projects are phased, so you know we're in phase one in Tobago, Barbados, and Antigua, but going into phase two in Barbados. We pre-developed all 17 other island markets, so we have, you know, a lot of room to grow. And we're really at the point now where we need to move away from sort of private investment and getting into more of a institutional investment on a larger scale so we can accelerate the development. We've, you know, we've made mistakes, we've fixed everything, we've kind of, you know, figured out now exactly what's going to work and what doesn't work. And so we're really now able to move forward and scale up very quickly.
Yeah, that's exciting. And you know, that journey of sort of a pilot, initial customer that's more premium, then moving into more of the wider market, all the things you talked about with trying different technologies. That's a lot of work. There's a lot of challenges. We talk about that a lot at Agritecture. So it's great to hear that you've gotten through that, and now you're actually sounds like you think you can really do this across all the Caribbean islands, which is very exciting for scale and impact on that market and of course the food security of that too. So I want to talk a bit about the hurricanes themselves, right? So I grew up in Hong Kong, so I know like typhoons, but so I'm just like curious, what has that been like, and what have some of the experiences been like for that? And talk us through again some of these redundancies more specifically. So starting with the greenhouse, what does the structure need, and the other redundancies related to that, just a little bit more specificity. And I
Sure.
guess if you can, how does that increase the cost? Because I think a lot of people hear that and say, well, how is that going to add up? Obviously there must be a market reason for that. The imports, the price of the product you mentioned is high, but just walk us through that a little bit, how the justification for the infrastructure works and some of the choices you've made, some of the lessons you've learned.
Well, yeah, like you know, like any greenhouse farming enterprise, the you know the first order of business is identify the crops you need to grow, want to grow. What's in demand in the market? What are you know what do the customers want in volume? Obviously, they want a fairly diverse variety, but they also need a lot of volume. So looking at the different types of crops, we do a lot of lettuce heads. We do a lot of leafy greens like arugula, watercress, spinach,
Mm.
kale, a lot of fresh herbs, and we do, some microgreens as well. That's all on the green side.
Because those are all really low quality, I imagine, when they're imported, right? Of course. So
They're all imported. So we only
I mean, a
grow what is
microgreen that's
imported.
imported to the Caribbean, it's gonna be awful, right? So
Right. Yeah. And then of course you've got your berry fruits and there's
yeah,
a
those as
lot of
well.
tomato varieties that are imported. They really just don't grow that many varieties here, and most of them are really substandard varieties, to be honest with you, and very seasonal. So they're not available all year round anyway. So focus on the type of crops, then look at the production system that we're going to use to, again, to mitigate risk, to optimize yield. But also they have to be energy and water efficient because, energy is very
Energy is
expensive
very
down
expensive,
here,
right?
right?
Yeah.
In
It's
in
like
North America,
34 cents a kilowatt hour or something like that, right? Because
uh, yeah, the average is up around 38 actually. And in some islands it's up over 50 cents a
I mean,
kilowatt
that
hour.
is like, for example, for vertical farming, I've been contacted by various island states about vertical farms, and they give me that number and I say, that's not going to work for a vertical farm. Like that's just,
It won't work for a vertical farm.
yeah.
There are a couple of opportunities here where the some islands do have low cost energy. It's subsidized.
Okay.
Um, excuse me, but no, the average is 38 cents a kilowatt hour. So,
Really high.
which this now brings us back into the energy game, right? Energy and food are very closely related down here. All of our farms are programmed to introduce, different forms of energy. We're really looking at wind power, actually. We have a new wind partner now, a company that does, sort of medium style turbines that can pop them up on 40 square feet of land and they can generate about 120 to 140,000 kilowatt hours a year with one single turbine. So, because we use, very little energy in the greenhouse, we're really looking at pumps. It's all pumps and
Right.
filters. We don't really have any, we don't need any additional lighting. We have this beautiful irradiation period. The sun comes up at 6 a.m. and goes down at 6 p.m. So every day we get 12 hours of solid sunlight in the greenhouse, right? We don't have to worry about cloud cover. So the only time that it gets cloudy is if there's a storm, right? So other than that, we have perfect irradiation conditions, great light spectrum. Um, Adds a lot of heat though, so ventilation and cooling
Cooling
has
is,
to be looked at very closely. Um, Phase one typically we will go on the grid because we do not use a lot of power initially in the first
right.
phase, and we have backup diesel generator. Um, and then we start to introduce, the turbines and the renewable power into phase two and three when we ramp up and we need to look at our unit cost of production, try to get that lower. And we can pretty well lower it by about 50%, maybe a little up to 60% using wind power. So, um, and then the greenhouses themselves, we're using, two Canadian-based systems, one from Sprung, which is very strong system. It does require dynamic cooling. So we have our farm in Antigua has dynamic cooling using a longitudinal wet wall system with plenty of circulation across the greenhouse, which is about 60 feet wide. And then we have the Cravo system where we're using for greens and tomatoes and peppers, we can use the Cravo system, which is you know, um, also highly wind resistant, and we can open and close roofs and shading systems and insect screens. And I think you know all about those. So they've proven to be very effective in subtropical and tropical zones around the world for those types of crops. So yeah, so
Yeah.
based on where we are, what kind of crop we're going to grow, what the customers want, we kind of adjust on the fly between the production systems and the greenhouse systems that we use.
Yeah, super interesting to think about the infrastructure of these sites. And you even talked about infrastructure funding. You got the renewable energy, you've got the backup systems, you've got the actual infrastructure of the greenhouse. You can really see them. Like I can see it also in your image, your cover image, but you can see these as these sites that are developing and becoming, food secure and independent from everything else. So that's
And
really
and
great.
and then for water, I should just expand a little
Yes,
bit on the
please.
water because we do rainwater catchment, right? So we're collecting
But
water off the
you don't
rooftops.
have a lot of groundwater or it's very salinity, right? This is probably a big issue.
Um, well, all of the the municipal water, we'll call it, is desal, right? Which is not, it's got a lot of chemicals in it. It's really actually not very good for growing at all. We can dilute it and use it for backup, but our primary source is rainwater collection. So we're constantly collecting rainwater, storing it in a big, 35, 50,000 gallon tank, depending on the size of the farm. And then we're filtering it and recirculating it as
Mm.
well, right? So, we're reusing that water up to a point, and then we, flush it and bring in some fresh water. But
Yeah.
that's absolutely key to have that as your primary water source, and then use the either well water or municipal water, whatever you can get on the island, because the water supply is always very tentative, right? It's on and off all the time. You can't really depend on it. So you need a primary water supply and use that as a backup supply.
Yeah, it sounds like your farm has to be totally independent with this infrastructure.
Yeah.
And these farms are contributing to food security, right? You talked about imports and, these fruits and vegetables, the low quality of them, the nutritional value of them is obviously lost. Tell us a little bit about that. What do your customers say? What do maybe the community say about what's going on? How has the reaction been to having fresh produce on the island?
Well, the customers love it because, for the first time, they can get sort of multiple deliveries every week.
Mm,
You have to understand that they are, either ordering through a food wholesaler on island who's bringing it in from Miami in bulk, and it comes in once a week, right? And once it's gone, it's gone. You have to
the
wait for
shelves are
the
empty.
next
Yeah.
week, right?
Mhm.
So, in being able to especially with supermarkets, if the shelves go empty, they can give us a call. If we've got something we can harvest and package right away, we can drop it off within a few hours, right? And they've never had that kind of access before, so they're really excited about that. Um, we're also in Antigua. We'll also be doing yacht provisioning, so we're doing
Yeah.
farm to galley supply service. And because they insist on extremely high quality produce
Right.
on those yachts. Most of them bring it in on their own. They bring all of their fresh produce in from different parts of the world, wherever they are. If they're in Antigua, they have a license to bring it in and take it right into their galley, and they pay a huge premium for that, of course. So we're going to be starting that in Antigua as well. And I think the big difference, between operating in the Caribbean and this is going to sort of segue into the investment side
Mhm.
here, Henry, that, the cost of fresh produce in the Caribbean that is imported is extremely high because unlike the US where you have traditional farming that competes with greenhouse farming, it's certainly at certain times of the year. In the Caribbean, we don't have that, right? We don't have any local production other than what we're doing and a few others like us. Excuse me. So you're looking at a, you know, a 140, 170 gram pack of arugula, fresh arugula that's been imported, right? You're going to pay $9 to $10 US for that. Something that sells in the US for $2 to $3 a package, you're looking at prices that are 4 to 5 times higher.
Right.
We get Driscoll strawberries in, they tend to get priced out here at about $10, $11 a pound on the retail shelf, right? So all of the prices for produce down here are very high, which makes our business model very extremely viable, right? Because we've got the production, the unit cost of production down to a point now where it's very competitive with what it would cost in the US to produce it. And yet we're selling it at 4 times the rate, the wholesale rate. So, our ROIs down here are close to 30 to 40% on average across all crop types. Um, our payback on any of the farms is about 2 years. And of course, we want to use that capital and that equity to regenerate and get into the next phase because, it's great that you can make some really decent return on phase one, but you really start to see the return once you expand and you triple and quadruple the size of that first phase.
Yeah, so you really see the scale going up and making a difference for that. That sounds really exciting from a business perspective, the food security market perspective, the consumer. perspective. What an exciting job and business you have, Ralph. I have to
Yeah,
say,
it's fun.
not to mention be on the island vibes as well, which is not bad as
Yeah.
well.
Well,
So what kind of
it's not all, roses though, right?
it must be hard. Yeah, tell us about some
It's
of that.
not easy. You're dealing with an environment where, construction times are longer.
Mhm.
Construction costs are higher. We really have to, nail down our contractors. We have preferred contractors, preferred engineers now. So we have a Rolodex of preferred service providers and product
Yeah.
providers down here. But 80% of the equipment is imported down here, right? So again, we have to deal with the government. We have to get concessions and incentives. Fortunately, all of the governments in the region and the region as a whole is very focused on food security right now. So we never have any issue with that. It just everything takes time down here. Nothing moves too quickly down here. But we have a really solid team. We have a great team of suppliers, equipment and service suppliers that we can count on. And we're getting better and better at it every time we build another farm.
Yeah, it sounds like you built up so much team experience, retail experience as well, the site selection, the project development, and that's all what it takes to make a viable CEA business with multiple locations. And sounds like you're in a really sweet spot with a big economic opportunity. So you mentioned you're looking to sort of move into more infrastructure funding as opposed to earlier funding, right? Anything you want to add about that?
Well, up until now, we worked with private investment, local private investment. So,
Okay.
our partners in Barbados are local business interests there who have invested into the farm system with us. Same in Antigua, same in Tobago. Right now, what we're looking at is, a model to create Island Growers Caribbean as a head co, and to get a significant influx. Right now we're modeled around 10, 11 million US. That would get us, six new farm starts in 4 years, right?
Mhm.
We would hire, we'd have our own sort of construction project management team, have three individuals that, we already have kind of picked out who are very familiar with working in the region and getting people to get the job done. So we would have three new project starts done within 18 months, and then another three right after that, and get six new island farms started. The vision is to have a farm on every island, right? We're trying to reduce shipping, so we're not looking at anything sort of centralized. We want to have the production on each island. We do bring in, very experienced sort of farm manager horticulturalists to run the farms, right? People with a lot of commercial greenhouse experience. But aside from that, we want to hire local, and bring young people in because young people do have an interest in agriculture,
Yeah.
but they're really not that interested in tilling the soil anymore, right? They
Yeah.
want into the high tech world of agriculture. So we don't have any problem attracting, graduates from the UE Faculty of Agriculture or, other schools, technical schools in the region to bring them in and train them from the ground up in advanced hydroponics and, the entire system that we're operating with. So that's been a very encouraging part of it. And yeah, it's we're ready to grow quite literally and accelerate that expansion. Over the last 5 or 6 years, we've pre-developed every island location. So we have land sites ready. We have
Okay.
the
You
sort of
mentioned that. Yeah.
welcome mat laid out where, we've got the government in contacts who are inviting us to come in. But it's been a challenge, getting that initial investment on an island by island basis.
Of
We
course, it's
want to,
a new thing. Yeah.
right.
So
So
you need the main company and this
we need to,
broader.
yeah, we
Yeah.
need to bring in a substantial amount now, and roll this out very quickly. Because the sooner that we get established in every island, the sooner we kind of control the market, right? Because as soon as we have the main customers under contract, it's, it's going to be very difficult for somebody else to come in. So we're trying to ramp up as quickly as possible now.
You've got some early mover advantage, as they say, and you're growing. So, how many years before you've got one on every island? I love that vision, a farm on every island, island growers on every island in the
Well,
Caribbean.
realistically, we could get phase one going within 10 years, and have, all 17. It's not just the islands, by the way. It's, we got Guyana in the mix there.
Okay. Yeah. The Caribbean more broad.
Suriname is also a possibility, but the rest of them are standalone islands. So yeah, it's a big region. If you look at all of the islands combined, there's kind of 30 different islands, and we count Bermuda too. So
Yeah.
all the way down to Trinidad. So yeah, we love to get going on, and get established on every island.
Super. I love that vision. I think it's really exciting. I'm rooting for you. I find it really interesting, and everything you shared today was really valuable for anybody thinking about island states or curious about what you're doing there, and how do you create these sort of infrastructure focused solutions with the renewable energy and the water capture, et cetera. Ralph, where can people reach out to you to learn more and to connect with you or discuss investing?
Well, yeah, you can just Google my name. You see it there, Ralph Birkhoff, with an H, and you can reach me at rbirkhoff@alchemyrenewables.com or ralph.birkhoff@gmail.com. But you can Google me and find our companies. We're pretty transparent, pretty out there. Obviously, on LinkedIn, I'm there and have a wide network there as well. So. But yeah, we'd love to hear from anybody that's interested in joining us and partnering with us. Um, while we're looking for equity, we already have our debt financing set up, right? So we have some regional banking institutions that are already providing us access to debt. So, we're really just looking for a strong equity partner now who shares our vision, and then we're off to the races.
Well, congratulations on your progress so far. And again, wishing you the best for what comes next. Ralph, thank you so much to everybody for listening in this conversation about greenhouses and hydroponics in the Caribbean and island growers. We are constantly sharing stories from around the world of CEA and urban ag and the future of food. So thank you for listening. If you want to learn more about this, there's tons of content on our blog, but also our YouTube channel with hundreds of videos and interviews just like this. Thanks so much, Ralph. Thank you, everyone. And let's have a great 2026.
Okay, thanks, Henry. Have a great year. Look
Thanks so
forward
much,
to
Ralph. I'll be in touch and
meeting
I'll
you in
tag you
person
on
next time.
LinkedIn. Tag you on LinkedIn when I post this. And of course, I hope maybe in September, I'll start. I travel a lot, but I've got some commitments. I teach at Columbia, but I'm going to hope